Hello and welcome to the NVR podcast number 22. I'm Rachael Aylmer.
And I'm Peter Jakob.
And today we are talking about parents' knowledge. How did we get to this topic this week, Peter?
Well, I saw someone on Zoom this morning, and I was just intrigued by some of the conversation that emerged between us. Should I share some of that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this is the mother of an adult young woman who is showing many facets of what has come to be called adult entrenched dependency. So she lives in her room. She has withdrawn very much into her room. More often it is young men than young women, but occasionally we see that in a young woman as well. The young woman is on the autism spectrum. She's recently been diagnosed. And since her diagnosis, she has become more entrenched in her dependency. It seems to have created the impression in her that she cannot be autonomous. That she needs to withdraw and depend on services. But that wasn't the issue, really. What intrigued me were some aspects of the conversation between her mother and me, and actually our relationship with one another. And the fact that her mother had carried out something, had taken action in a way that I felt was very significant. Yet, running up to our meeting, she felt a sense of dread. The mother, towards me. She felt she hadn't done enough and was nervous about facing me.
I know that feeling.
Do you? How do you know that?
I'm joking. Go on.
Okay. And so instead of talking about what she hadn't done, I was very curious about what kind of NVR action she had done. Because she said, I'd done so little. And when someone says, I've done so little, then my ears sort of prick up and I sort of think, so she's done something. What has she done? And I thought that what she'd done was highly significant. So what she said was, I stopped bringing her meals to her room. And so our conversation then took a whole different course. It was around what she had done in detail, how she'd done it. It was around what she'd felt when she'd done it. It was around how she'd overcome her anxiety overdoing it, or rather not overcome the anxiety, but how she did it in spite of her own anxiety. It was around, the conversation was around doing what she could do. Because she had lots of other things going on in her life at that moment. And actually, while I was away abroad for several weeks, that meant that she could do so much, but actually going beyond that would have been too taxing. And she would have almost set herself up to fail. So it was a conversation about her pacing herself. And I was intrigued by all these aspects being so positive to my mind. Yet her initial feeling of not having done enough, not having done it right, her sense of insufficiency. So to me, there was this contrast between her knowledge of herself, of her daughter, and many, many aspects of that came up in our conversation. I can relate loads of them later. That contrast between those positive aspects and her sense of insufficiency.
Mm. You know, I hear this. This is something I've also experienced in my work, where parents might often say, you know, I haven't done it right this week, or you'll be mad at me because I haven't done it right,
Yeah.
or I'm going to tell you about something that happened, but you won't like it.
Yeah, don't want to get Rachel mad at me.
I want to get Rachel mad at me. It's like, come on, that's not what I do. Having not done it right. Mm.
What are the ways that parents that you've worked with feel they haven't got it right?
Well, I wonder if they get a sense of NVR becoming much more fluid and transparent in their interactions with their young person, that when they fall back into those punitive traditional parenting styles that they left and embraced the NVR approach, that it becomes really clear to them that they're doing more NVR than not. And so when they're not getting it right.
Oh, okay. So that's a sense of insufficiency because I cannot always maintain a nonviolent position. And I sometimes slip back.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a kind of experience I've had as well.
I guess there are probably many, many reasons for, for parents to feel insufficient or wrong or not doing the NVR the right way or well enough or enough of it. Overall, to me, what seems to be at the bottom of it is that the internalization of parent blaming, which is often subtle and which is often unintentional. I mean, the mother I worked with this morning said something about her brother. And she had, because we were working with reconciliation gestures from the supporters, from the support network. And we were looking at reconciliation gestures which would remind the young woman that others bear her in mind. Of course, that's difficult for someone on the autism spectrum to fully appreciate. But that those gestures address a need of hers, nonetheless, the need to have a sense of belonging and to know that she's important to other people. And so the mother's brother, so the uncle of this young woman, had sent her some links to animal films because she likes those. Just as a small gesture showing I thought of you. And then he texted my client, the mother, and said, but she hasn't responded. And it was at that point that my client felt bad about herself again. Yeah. So, and so I explored that, and she said, yeah, so many times they say, well, I would just tell my daughter this. I would just make my daughter do that. And though well-intentioned, those messages seemed to be very discouraging. And she had internalized those. And they'd become part of her self-talk. And I gasped for a moment because I thought, hold on, this mother knows much more about autism, and she knows much more about her daughter than many of the supporters in the support network. Yet she is feeling bad over a message about her parenting from one of her supporters, and it so happens her brother, a very close person to her, you know. And I thought, gosh, what a missed opportunity. She could help the supporters become better supporters by imparting what she knows, the mother's knowledge, her own knowledge of her daughter, her own knowledge of autism, just like her knowledge of how she can pace herself was important as well, you know. So I said, well, how would it feel like to think that she might tell her brother, look, she's not going to respond. That's unlikely. And that could be to do with the fact that she is autistic, or it could also be to do with the fact that she has been withdrawn in her room for so long, you know, and that she is simply not used to engaging with others. But your gesture is nonetheless welcome and important. So what is important with someone like my daughter, your niece, is to keep making those gestures in spite of the fact, or maybe even because of the fact, that there is no reciprocal communication. And I just thought, wow, this is gold dust. This is gold dust. And then she looked at me and she came up, of course, with a much better idea. She said, no, I could post it to the whole group. I could write about it to the whole group. And I thought that was fantastic. So she had better knowledge also of her interactions with the group than I did, you know, because I thought, oh, she could go back into this conversation with her brother. And she found a much gentler but more persuasive way by just posting that to the whole group, you know. And I just thought, wow, that was brilliant.
Did she see her own brilliance? Did she acknowledge that she had that knowledge? Did she see that in herself? I wonder.
I think by the end of our conversation, she saw it more.
Cool. I wonder how that's left her feeling, if through the weekend or up until she sees you again, knowing that she knows this knowledge, knowing that she has those strengths, and how that's empowered her as a mother to her daughter.
I think that would be really interesting. Can I pick up what you just said?
Yeah, go on.
The knowledge of her knowledge.
The knowledge of her knowledge.
Yeah.
It's good English.
Sorry?
It's good English.
Yeah. To know that she knows. And or how did you put it? You put it better than I did.
Oh, I don't know. I have to play this recording back.
Okay. It's just you just said something about, you know, was she aware, or did she know?
Was she aware of the knowledge of her knowledge?
That's it. Was she aware of her knowledge? You know, that awareness and that knowledge is valuable. Do you sometimes experience that gap in parents between having knowledge, or you perceiving their knowledge, and their awareness of it?
Well, interesting, because I've got another kind of little theory in parents' knowledge. So I often say to my clients that you know your child better than anyone else, and sometimes that knowledge can sometimes get in the way. So, for an example, we could be working on an announcement and a parent would say, she won't like that. If I write that to her, and if I read that to her, she won't like that. So that knowledge in a sense that could be negative.
Yeah.
So making an assumption or a prediction that the child will respond this way, or this way, because they know their child best, and that's their. They assume, well, if I do this, my child will say that, and that. So therefore, it's not worth me doing that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, there were negative predictions about the child's reaction in the case of this mother that you've worked with. But also B, there was an assumption that she mustn't do anything that her daughter may not like.
Yes.
Which is part of that prison that many parents find themselves in. You're bringing up a really interesting question, because it seems that you're pointing to a tension, tension. Between the parent's knowledge and the change of what the parents believe that they know in certain respects. So, and when I think of my client, she said that she had thought, well, her daughter is her daughter is her daughter. That's how she is. And therefore, she was surprised that her daughter now comes down to eat dinner at the kitchen table. And, you know, in response to her no longer bringing the food up to her daughter's room. And so what she had believed is fact about her daughter became fluid. So I guess for us, it's really important, isn't it, then, to operate with both the possibility for parents to change their perspectives, and at the same time to help them value their knowledge and become aware of their knowledge, particularly in the face of negative self-talk or negative messages to them about their parenting. So we have to operate with that inherent tension, don't we?
Totally, absolutely. And I can see how parents get that negative self-talk responses for many attempts of trying to change the child or the way the child sees things or how the child responds. It goes back to that understanding, a bit of that logic of control. And you know, I recall a parent when I remember working with a family whose daughter refused to come and sit at the table. And I spoke with the mother in a way of continuing to invite. So you persist. So each day you would say, and your dinner's on the table, and would love to see you. And then you come back downstairs and eat with your other daughter. And then, the child remained upstairs. And then one day she came down and she sat at the table, but she had her back to her mother and sister. And she said, I'm sitting here, but I am not looking at you. And so she turned around and took a chip and sort of sat with her back, but the mother was absolutely celebrating the fact that she came down, and then it was another couple of days, and then she turned to the side, and then she eventually sat at the table and ate dinner, and it was an inclusive part of their day. But the mother's initial response, well, if I did invite her down, but she doesn't come, boom, boom.
Yeah. And of course, I'm just thinking that kind of what parents believe to be factual knowledge, it operates within a time frame, doesn't it? So what is happening now is seen to be what the daughter is like, period. Rather than, well, at this moment in time, my daughter is not yet coming down to the table. It reminds me of someone, one of my sort of gurus in the field of psychotherapy called Bill O'Hanlon practices something he calls Carl Rogers with a twist. So he, if a parent would say, "Oh, my daughter never comes down to the table," that's just how she is. Bill O'Hanlon would say, "Gosh, yeah, that's tough. It's been a long time since your daughter came down to the table." And yeah, she never comes down to the table. And then he would say, "Yeah, it's been much too long since she's come down to the table. It's been ages." And then the mother might say, "Yes, it's been a year since she's come down to the table." And Bill said, "Oh, a year." So tell me about the last time she came down to the table. And he widens that time frame, doesn't he? And creates possibilities. So I think for us then, when we're dealing with that tension between knowledge that the parents have that is a real resource for moving forward, and what they believe to be absolute fact, then we probably do well to help widen the time frame.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sorry,
Peter. I was going back to the mother you spoke to this morning and her daughter, and just how she set that expectation. I'm not bringing you food up here, and you'll eat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that absolute concrete, this is what you're doing. And it brings me to that mindset. The parents can and have the right to change the story. They can change the story. They can make change happen. And this is how I'd like our home to be.
But you know what I think? What you've just pointed to, that's the confidence.
Yeah.
So as my confidence grows, I can change the story. Maybe part of my confidence growing is valuing what I do know and bringing that into the process of change. Maybe simply, okay, I'm going to pace myself. Because what she did was she did one thing, as she set out to say only one thing, but she did one thing and she did it well. There was confidence and there was resolve, even though inside she was anxious. And I asked her to role play what she'd done. And she did it expressing confidence that this is how it's going to be.
Oh, that's brilliant. Lovely.
Yeah. Good. So I guess, gosh, we seem to have covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, 23 minutes of it.
Yeah. Starting out from one consideration, that of valuing the parent's own knowledge. And I guess, to me, the collaboration between us as NVR practitioners, who are sometimes parents as well, incidentally, and the parents we work with, is around respecting the parent's knowledge whilst working with the tension between the parent's knowledge and those beliefs of the parents that hold them back, and helping the parents discover new possibilities.
Yeah, so beautifully put. But yeah, I could carry on talking more about the knowledge again, but I'm not going to.
Oh, come on, just on the tip of your tongue to round up our.
No, I just, I've spoken to a client, a new referral this morning, and a parent who who feels very let down by the system and the services that he's received on behalf of his son, and his knowledge of his son and his son's needs, and how he is really fighting for his son's in his corner for his child and his young person, and how by that feeling let down, as I talked to him about this referral, how he is stereotyping my service, this intervention. I will just be like all the others.
Mm-hmm.
I won't listen. I'll tell him what to do. This is what is language to me, but this was in between the lines. And I felt really sad for this parent, because he also said, you know, I'm not directing this at you personally, Rachel, you know, but and he just hasn't had his voice heard, and he's been misunderstood, and he's been let down by services. This is his experience, not my judgment. And, you know, and I just felt how it was getting in the way. His experiences were getting in the way of him being able to trust in this approach, and to embrace this approach and begin to create some new confidence. So I was just thinking about his knowledge of his son, and he is the expert of his son, and he knows what his son needs. But what I was referring to a lot of the time as well was this intervention's for you, for you and your partner, and that was the difference.
Did he eventually appreciate that you were not going to simply tell him what to do?
I maybe I can't speak for him. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to speak to him again next week. I just keep drip feeding him.
Yeah, because I think
no rush, no pressure.
I think when professionals tell parents what to do, that in and of itself is already critical of them. And I think it reinforces, if parents have negative self-talk, it reinforces the negative self-talk as well.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe this new referral will come on board and maybe it won't. But what I try to do in these moments of talking to this dad, I've given him a lot of my time, is to listen.
Yeah.
To listen and to hear his suffering, and to empathise with the journey he's been on. You know, it's not been easy.
And I think that opens up space for a recognition that you will be offering possibilities rather than delivering instructions.
Yeah, I said that.
Good.
Okay, right, that's us. I just wanted to remind any listeners that they can always email any questions or thoughts to our info@partnershipprojectsuk.com email address. And also just to remind everyone to check out our website for up and coming events such as the CPV Study Day and the 2 workshops that we've got on our website that have been advertised, along with the launch of the new NVR Association.
And I just wanted to mention that Rachel shared some really interesting stats with me before we went on air. Including the fact that the audience to this podcast has become truly international. And I just thought I would pass that on. We have now listeners in Italy, listeners in Germany, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, loads of listeners in London, apparently, and listeners from the north of England. Yes.
We got the north. They're our biggest listeners.
Yes.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you. The north and the south divide. Yeah. We meet. It's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's goodbye.
Goodbye.